big believers in digital first creative, as controversial as that might be. So marketers are still trying to rely on these algorithms to do the heavy work for them, but the algorithms are lazy. And now with AI turbocharged onto it, think about it as turbo laziness. Direct-to-consumer e-commerce in many ways is a startup phase, but around $10 million, you are going to start seeing some diminishing returns where the next jump is, I think the content creator is the potential next sort of boutique store owner. Each brand will end up with its own sort of synthetic influencers group, but don't sleep on this. All right, hi, my name is Chris Fraser. Welcome back to a run through of marketing in the news for July 2025. I'm going to go through a number of things that have happened in the Australian market and also some just views and opinions on what's taken place and transpired over that period of time as well. I am the CEO of Intentional, a specialist marketing agency who is focused on helping brands uncover their unique, differentiated strengths to communicate to the message and market for customers. And so our focus sits primarily on the digital space. We're big believers in digital first creative, as controversial as that might be. And I just want to do a bit of a takedown of what we're kind of seeing in the market from our point of view each week. So maybe no one's watching this, maybe someone's watching this, but I hope it can add some value of a non-biased view of what we're looking at. And the first thing I want to talk about is the shift that's taking place in the online and offline world right now. And that it's something we've probably known for a while. Maybe COVID delayed that a little bit, but it's this saturation of the Australian market for retailers, and particularly hitting a ceiling point with digital ad spend and particularly profitable digital ad spend. So the brand I want to talk about is Elite 11. Absolute darling of the Instagram and TikTok ad space. It's a very simple tracksuit hoodie style brand. It's gender neutral. You will be seeing it everywhere from an online point of view, but for their ability to actually separate themselves from the rest of the crowd of other casual sportswear, athleisure wear, it's not even really sits in that athleisure wear, it really sits in the comfy Sundays kind of viewpoint rather than specifically for performance. But what they have done is to make the bridge across into retail. Now, LSKD, I would say, is absolutely leading the pack in this within this space, but without knowing the ins and outs of both brands, it feels like LSKD is actually a bit further down on that journey. They've got a lot more product verticals, and they've obviously spent a lot more time investing in online than my perception of Elite 11. I could be wrong here. But it's interesting to see both of those brands, LSKD and Elite 11, move into a physical retail environment. And why this is so interesting, because it's at the same time as that is not really getting reported on, but is happening organically and naturally. I think that will happen more, but you've got massive trending brand over the last few years, the Country Road Group, and the hero brand there, Country Road, is declining in physical stores and in physical store assumption of revenue, and without really ever owning an online space. We're going to reach this really interesting part where I think for all categories, particularly for fashion, but I think for all categories for Australian retailers, we're going to see more and more of these brands which were viewed as direct-to-consumer only, making a play into their own, direct-to-consumer online only, making a play into some physical stores. I think that's really exciting for what that might mean for a number of businesses that maybe have been difficult to break through, maybe hit a saturation point in their online journey. What it speaks to me is what I've been feeling for a few years and have communicated multiple times to our clients, is that direct-to-consumer e-commerce in many ways is a startup phase, if the equivalent of a tech startup. If you think about that for a retail, that is the way to go and get seed funding, is go and prove the product market fit yourself with ads and online. But you are going to reach a saturation point. For most Australian fashion, lifestyle, homewares brands, that's going to be around $10 million revenue. Now it's a generalization, but around $10 million you are going to start seeing some diminishing returns where the next jump is, okay, let's get into a wider range of product verticals and see if we can leverage our audience and grow our brand that way. But there's also that opportunity to start looking at, well, what would it mean to actually go into physical retail? I was lucky enough to attend a talk with Ethan from July Luggage earlier in the year. And while a lot of that was Chatham Rules talk, one of the biggest takeaways and something I can definitely share was that they have built an ROI model based on opening stores, and you see the investment and the love and the care and the customization that they put into each store for July Luggage. But they've worked out in the same way that online retailers and pure play e-commerce think about a return on investment or a market efficiency ratio. They are definitely taking that across into the physical retail space. So my prediction and what I think will be happening more is we're going to see a lot of brands that are bouncing around that 10 to 20 million, maybe, even let's say from 7 to 20 million, who have been stuck and stagnant there for a while, that might feel cautious or don't know the next move to go into physical retail. And there might be someone that's smaller than them or newer than them, or someone that's built a model around, hey, we're going to get this to a certain size online, that's going to overtake them in the mind. In no way would I have thought that Elite 11 is the next biggest after LSKD before this is taking place. But I saw it, my local Westfield here in Melbourne at Doncaster, but then I go down to Sorrento and it's amongst those brands as well. So some really, really smart locations in terms of brand positioning and what you're actually able to do with the brand there. It's really exciting times. Conversely, what are we seeing with the Country Road Group? So we're seeing brands that didn't embrace a digital brand transformation. So the big hot thing was a digital transformation, right? Getting all your systems and your processes, and let's obsess about click and collect because that's what digital is. That's great. But the second part of that is, how does your brand grow and translate to the digital environment? Now, a firm believer in a brand is a brand, whether it's online or not. But there is absolutely a shift that you can't deny, that if brands that think digital first and design ads and communicate to their market, where the majority of impressions are for most brand on feeds, are going to succeed and win. And I would say Country Road is one of those brands that continue to take what they did for their retail store environment and cut it down and cut it down and cut it down for each of the feeds. I can't think of a campaign that I've seen or an ad campaign or a specific piece of ad creative that felt it was designed for me as a digital customer, digital first, that then was built up to a store level. It was always sort of a top-down approach. And I believe that that is going to become a big problem for a number of players who are spending a large amount of budget on the digital space, but are maybe not seeing the cut through, or again are getting stagnation because they've failed to understand, how do you take your brand positioning and your story and what might work in a retail or a TV environment and bring that to a digital environment. Now, this doesn't mean everything's got to be short, sharp changes that don't have any substance, that everything is user-generated content. I'm a big believer in having user-generated content or actor-generated content or lo-fi content. That's usually because it's feeding what the algorithms need, and that's part of digital first creative. It's thinking about, okay, what do the algorithms need? What do our customers need? And what do we want to communicate as a brand? And that is a massive difference with digital creative that doesn't happen on TV. TV ads don't need you to create an ad that Channel 7 likes or Channel 10 likes. That's not a factor in how your ad performs. But it absolutely is a factor for Instagram. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat, they all want their users to stay on their platform. So they are going to give preference to ads that actually help their users want to engage and stay on that platform. So there is a third player in digital first creative that is often so forgotten about, which is actually the shortcut to that often is user-generated content, because you're putting your target market in, they're talking about pain points, they're focused on the first 3 seconds, they're thinking about how to hold your attention, they're making transition, and the story arc is not this slow build with the reveal, it's bang with the punchline up front, and then they might go into some story, then another punchline story. So user-generated content is fantastic and often a great shortcut for brands who are still developing the way to do digital first creative, because content creators have already developed that. But if we take that Country Road, and I think really this is just a shortcut for a whole bunch of retailers that we're probably spending, as I said, a significant amount online, maybe even more than their traditional media budgets now, but they've failed to evolve the brand to a digital first creative approach. And that is going to become fundamentally important again, because maybe their moat or the territory they've been able to protect is their physical stores. So might be weaker on their digital first creative, but they've had those huge retail spaces, clear brand positioning. What happens when competitors to Country Road? So you're obviously seeing the emergence of Rod and Gun. What happens if the next, whatever that is, that 30 to 50-year-old white Australian brand, what happens if that translates from whoever's going to do that online and starts coming to physical spaces, and all of a sudden Country Road feels like Maya, and the ick feeling goes up, and kind of, why do I want to wear a massive Country Road logo across on every single thing that I do? And so this sort of comparison of like, look at the Elite 11 strategy and how they're growing, and then look at what's happening to Country Road is really speaking across that retail environment right now. And I think is worth paying a lot of attention to, because there is some things at play that are covering all of those brands. So let's get into a few of those. Firstly, we are reaching a point where we are seeing a declining or a difficulty in acquiring new customers. So what does that look like online is, for a lot of brands in 2024, revenue is flat or maybe a little bit up, but existing customer numbers are through the roof. Now, there was loyalty programs launched, there was macroeconomics, and so people actually were celebrating that. And coupled with that, speaking to my direct-to-consumer or e-commerce brands specifically, there was an obsession with marketing efficiency ratio, MER. Now, in a sense, that's great. It's your total spend. So your total revenue divided by your total spend gives you a market efficiency number. Somewhere at a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 was, generally that 3 to 7 was a target of, say, hey, we don't care what the ad platforms say. If you can get this result, we're happy days. If you can get us a 3 to 7 times what we spend in turning that into revenue, we're good. And at the same time, these loyalty numbers were going up, existing customers. What people were failing to track was acquisition market efficiency ratio, which is what did we spend divided by how many new customer revenue did we receive, and then what does that look like? And so over the last 12 months, we've seen a massive decline across new customer acquisition for a number of large spending brands. This is both omnichannel and online, and it's a real pandemic of results. There's certain equations that are telling you to buy a certain model of media that really discounts what can actually take place for acquiring new customers. The way you speak to new customers, the products that they purchase are different. And so over the last 12 to 18 months, I'd say marketers are still trying to rely on these algorithms to do the heavy work for them, but the algorithms are lazy. And now with AI turbocharged onto it, think about it as turbo laziness. So if you tell it we want purchases at the cheapest cost, guess where they're going? Existing customers and bottom of the funnel. And you say, yeah, but we've got an existing customer list. But we know only 50% of them match. That's if it's fully up to date and not broken. And a lot of brands we've seen, their Klaviyo, their Salesforce connections have connection issues. So that's relying on your data being watertight and the match rate being lower. And on top of that, it's finding people, and maybe better than ever, finding people who are just about to buy, but would they have bought anyway? And so I think it's really important, and maybe the takeaway here is to start thinking about your budget not as a performance budget or a brand budget, but start thinking about it as an acquisition budget and a brand budget. So your acquisition budget, it should be acquiring new customers. Your brand budget can do a blend of getting existing customers coming back and buying, but also telling new people about it. So that's one part. The second part we're seeing is that wider take on what we're seeing with existing retail brands in not embracing that digital first, which we've spoken through. And I think this hesitation to think about campaigns from a digital first approach, and almost, because it sounds like we're trying to make a headline or a LinkedIn post, or this might be controversial, but it's the reality of like all of these people making decisions in their 9 to 5, and then in their 5 to 9 behave in a completely different way. And I've been there, I've been in marketing teams where you look at things on massive screens and there's the creative director in the room and everyone's excited about the idea, but then you go home and you scroll on your way home, get the kids to bed, have dinner, get back on your phone. And what is the content that you're consuming? It is not perfectly lit, well-directed 30-second pieces where the brand is talking about themselves. You're watching the point of view, getting ready with me. You're watching all of that style content that is lo-fi in nature because it is talking to you. And again, that's what the algorithm is going to favor and show in there. So I think there's a bigger trend happening here that's underpinned, let's call it the Elite 11 and the Country Road conundrum. And then let's plot where you are in between that as a brand. But I think don't sleep on this. There's either a chance you're an e-commerce brand, you've got a great level of success, you're stagnating, digital performance is going down. Is it the time for retail? Is it time to take a leap? There's a number of fantastic brands to look at. Venroy, LSKD, Elite 11 we spoke about, July Luggage. Or are you in the old school retail historical brand where you've traditionally leveraged your physical stores, but now they're underperforming, you've invested in digital transformation but haven't transformed your brand? These are the opportunities that I see across those two phases of retail.